The honourable member for Timmins James Bay. Mr. Angus.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Speaker. This week, the Minister of Indigenous Services signed a letter to his own cabinet colleagues calling them not to block justice for Indigenous and Black people. Now, this is a minister whose own department and government has been found guilty of, quote, willful and reckless discrimination against First Nation kids. So why doesn't he just take a spoonful of his own medicine and end the legal battle against First Nation kids?
The honourable minister.
I thank the member for the question. And indeed, as the Prime Minister has said time and time again, as we have said time again, we will compensate First Nations children for the harm that they have suffered there. The member knows this well. There are 3 cases that are outstanding, and we are making modest progress, but a very positive progress on these cases. And I hope to have more information to share with the House at a later date.
Mr. Angus.
Modest progress. I mean, this week, the minister was willing to chastise the RCMP commissioner and rebuke her for her failure to live up to the best. Now he's telling us modest. I don't know if he read the Human Rights Tribunal. It found his government guilty of, quote, willful and reckless racial discrimination that was, quote, intentional, with no regard for the consequences of children, and children have died. Is he willing to say that his ongoing legal battle that is now up at $10 million is modest progress?
The honourable minister.
Madam Chair, in the course of implementing those court orders, the budget of Indigenous Services Canada allocates over $600 million to achieve equity between First Nations children and non-First Nations children. This is a significant progress over years. Progress is slow. It is sometimes too slow, and we keep moving aggressively to make sure that First Nations children aren't left behind. We will continue to do so, Madam Speaker.
The last question, Mr. Angus.
Well, thank you. Let's talk about how they implement this budget. So in order to pretend compliance with the Human Rights Tribunal, his officials told Child and Family Services that they had a, quote, unlimited prevention funding for prevention work. That was his quote. And then after the organization spent the money, he refused to pay. So in Saskatchewan, they're owed $47 million. So why doesn't he stop telling people how to take the knee and tell us that he is going to pay that money that was promised to frontline child and protection services across Canada?
Brief answer from the minister.
Well, Madam Chair, as part of implementing Child and Family Services legislation reform, we're moving forward with First Nations to ensure that they exercise that right of self-determination, to ensure that they have control and custody over their children. We will absolutely continue to do so. We are also, as part of COVID, allowing and ensuring that First Nations communities and children aging out of care are properly supported as well, and the federal government will not cease in order to ensure that First Nations children are indeed properly taken care of on the conditions set forth by First Nations communities.
L'honorable